Okay, this is Kobe, and yeah, this is looking pretty good. Um, Looks like you've paid attention to the proportions, and um, matches pretty well. I think that you'll want to cut out the windows. Um, the way the module shows you is using a boolean like this, and oops, I selected them in the wrong order. Mesh. And I'm not a big fan of booleans, and the reason is you can see in these sort of diagonal lines, I think it doesn't do a great job of the topology, that is the way the faces of the surface are laid out. So I'm just going to undo that and show you another approach. If I use my multi-cut tool by doing a mesh, edit mesh tools, multi-cut. I always use the hotkey, which is Control Shift X. And then if I hold down Control, so you can line this up here, here, and then I can do some vertical ones here, 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 there. And then it could be a little more precise than that, but then I can take out these windows like so, and then build the window frame around it with these little surfaces, adding little elongated cubes and so forth in there. So and look, it did the other side simultaneously. So that's just another approach, and then you don't get those weird diagonal lines. You get a nice kind of, these four-sided faces. This is what you call a quad, a four-sided face, and it's better to have your surface made of quads than all these weird triangles. Yeah, I think as you move forward, one thing I noticed is that this is sort of wedge shaped. Not exactly sure how you ended up with that, but I don't think you want it to be wedge shaped. I think it's much more flat, and then you'll also notice these little support beams underneath it, which you can add. Take a close look at the profile of this column. A nice way to do that would be to draw a curve and do a revolve to match that. So you might want to try a revolve under the surfaces menu. I can demonstrate that real quick just as an example. It'd be helpful to have the image there, but I'll just kind of freehand it, create curve tools, CV curve tool, and need to do a few extra on this first one. You just kind of drawing something like the profile of one of these. Hold down shift, it'll go straight down. Anyways, that's pretty rough. I mean, you can do a more accurate. Oops. Just holding down shift to go on a straight line, and then make sure the pivot points in the center there. Then I can do under the surfaces menu, revolve. It should be the default options to revolve around Y. And that's too big, but what I can do is I can adjust this So I'm just going to take all these and kind of, whoops, move them in like so, and then select this and try revolve again. Yeah, something like that. It's you know, and then sort of scale it to be the right size for this. You know, and then it's the surface is reversed. You can see both sides if you do lighting, two-sided lighting, which might be better, but it's nice to notice this. So if I do under surfaces, because this is a NURB surface, reverse direction, yeah, and then that gets the dark part on the inside. So I might have gone some of the pieces too big, but you get the idea of how to do it anyway, so that can make you some nice columns. Yeah, and you'll want to do kind of more kind of there's like a bulging round shape here. I think this overhang is a bit bigger than you've got it, so you can go a little wider there. And there's a kind of a beam here for them, like right there. You can fill in that, and then maybe there's like a horizontal one going along the bottom here. You know, make sure you get all the window pane separators and windowsill and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is a really good start. This is Gabrielle, and yeah, I think this is a good start. I think you're going to want to just take another pass at the proportions. There's a few things that look out of proportion to the source image. For example, look at the length of the deck here, and then look at the length of the deck here. So this, you know, looks like it could be a lot narrower there. Whoops. And take a look at just, you know, for example, the amount of space between. Well, look for example at the height of the window here, and your window goes almost all the way to the ground, and yet there's this space below it here, so that's going to be a lot smaller. And same for this window here, and there's at least a little bit of space between the sign and the window, but you have them overlapping. So I think, you know, you got to pay attention to the proportions there. I think that, you know, this thing is gonna, oh, you have that as one thing, but I'll just grab the verts here. Not these though. Just control selecting those to delete, to deselect those. Kind of pull that out a bit more, and maybe make it thinner too. Maybe just hit F to frame selected. And actually it presses right up against those things too, so I might actually move these guys up a little bit. Looks a little better. And then I also think that it's, I mean, it's a bit hard to tell because of the angle, but to me it looks like this roof comes much closer to the top of the facade than you have it, so I might yeah, just select these verts here and then shift select this and move this all up some, maybe more like that, middle mouse drag. Yeah, and I demonstrated in the last one, you could either use booleans or you could cut out the holes with a multi-cut tool, so you might want to try that. Yeah, look at the thickness of this wall too compared to this thickness you see here, so I think that's going to be thinner. Move that, but then there's kind of a gap. I'll move little bit more in proportion to the thinness of that. So yeah, the overall point is kind of really compare this side by side and do the proportions, cut out your windows and doors, add a bunch of detail. This could actually be thinner too. But yeah, so just side by side fix the proportions before you start adding detail, but then yeah, go ahead and cut the detail in there. This is Princeton, and yeah, really good work on this. You're really clearly paying attention to the proportions. You got a step ahead by doing some colors, and you got some detail already on the windows and doors, so that's good. For improvements, I would say, just take another finer pass at some of the proportions. For example, look at how thin this white line is compared to this one. So you might make that thinner. For me, I think let's take care of this. So I'm just going to highlight these, shift select these, and move these down. Something's funny about this surface. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, the other big thing about this I'm noticing is, so first of all, I don't know why when I pick stuff over here, it's doing stuff over there. It makes me think there's an instanced object on this side or something. Not sure. Let me try just deleting history. I'll shift D, or you can do edit delete by type history. One of the big things I would say, once I select this is it's much too dense for this surface. Like you have, I don't know how many faces on that back wall. We could pick them like so. Just as an example. What is going on? Sorry, I'm just selecting that and deselecting this. Going back here. Okay, so I've got this back wall selected. I can do display, heads up display, poly count to see. And this is saying, I don't know if that's right, but it was 1,790 faces. That could be one face, that whole big thing. Oh, I know why it's being funny with that selection thing before. That was my fault. I had symmetry on. So this is a little advanced, but if you hold down W and click, you can go symmetry and then symmetry and turn that on and off, and it'll affect both sides of the model at the same time. So, but anyways, the model is a bit too dense. Well, it's a lot too dense. There's no reason for all this geometry. I'm not sure how you ended up doing that. But anyway, I was showing how to make these thinner. So something like that. Okay, and because it's so dense though, you could, there's some like unevenness to that. If you wanted to put something like that in, you could do something like select an edge like that. I'll just hold down Control and deselect from the side, so I just have the top. And then if I hit B, it's called, that's soft select, so it kind of affects the area around it. And I'll hold down B and click and drag, and see I can grow my selection here, my soft selection. And then I can do something like, put little bends in the roof. I'm actually going to make that much bigger. Put kind of a dip in there, So you can go around and add those little sort of imperfections that kind of help bring it to life. There's other little detail. Oh yeah, don't forget to hit B again to turn off soft selection. Incidentally, soft selection is something that really messes people up a lot. So if you ever see these these weird colors on your surface and it's doing weird stuff to you, then it's probably because you have soft selection on. So just hit B again. Another trick I use a lot is I did Control Spacebar to hide the interface and show it again, by the way. But if I double click on, for example, the Move tool and then hit Reset, that's another way to get things back to normal and turn off soft selection. Yeah, so other little details you could have is you have these little strips here, you have these kind of bits sticking out the end there. But really, oh yeah, and then pay close attention to, I just said Control Spacebar to hide that. Look how thin these window panes are, but you have them quite thick. So, as an example, you might take these, make it really thin, like those. And then you can do that for this. And this, etc. So pay attention to that as well. And if you wanted to add, you see these little kind of panels here. So again, I think this is too dense, but I can shift double click to select this row. Oops. Or I can just select these individually. But I can, if I want to do an extrude face, I can hold down Shift and then right mouse click, and then it'll give me this extrude face right here. And then I might click on this scale so I get the center one, just scale that down a little bit, and maybe push it back first, or just W for move. And then I'll extrude again, shift right mouse click, extrude face, and then scale this down a little bit, but now this time pull it out. Whoops, I messed it up. Oh, because I didn't realize that that's part of the door handle there. You've got that. Yeah, I wouldn't have all these extra surface pieces here. I don't really think you want a big square around the door. But hopefully you got the idea of how I could do that little panel shape in there. So yeah, overall good. A few touch-ups on the proportion, and then look for more details to add. Okay, this is Kendra, and yeah, I can see you're getting some of the basic shapes. There's some kind of funny issues with this one. See how when I move around, you see that flickering? That's usually a sign of something being wrong, and typically there's a surface one right on top of the other, which appears to be what's happened here. Sometimes that happens if you do an extrude and then you don't adjust the size. First thing I'm going to try to do to fix that is to go to Mesh Cleanup, and I will check Lamina Faces, Non-Manifold Geometry, Edges with 0 length, and Faces with 0 geometry, and clean up, and actually that did it. So that's the easiest way to clean up something like that. Gets rid of those extra surfaces. Another thing to look out for, you've got these kind of overlapping edges here, and that's going to result in some funny shapes. So I'm kind of untangling this here a little bit if I can. Maybe more like that. I'm not sure I would have extruded this out at this diagonal like that. What I might do is right mouse click edge, double click, take that whole edge, scoot that back. Oh wait, why didn't it didn't grab this one? shift selected that, scoot that back to get it to be pretty lined up again. And then if you want that overhang, what I would do is select this face, these faces along here. Might straighten that out first, but and then extrude face. One quick way to do that is shift right mouse click, extrude face. Then you can pull that out, and then you don't get that. See the difference between that? I've exaggerated it a bit here. It's a bit too big, and this with that kind of diagonal line there. And same with that. So you might fix that up, and yeah, maybe adjust the right mouse click edge. Bit. Another thing I was noticing, I'm going to turn off this heads-up display here, this polygon, it's a little distracting. So if you look at, to me this looks a bit longer relative to the size of the whole thing. Maybe not that much, but you know, if you kind of look at this distance, and this distance looks a little short compared to this distance, for example. So I think you might pull all that out. To do that, I might select all this and right mouse click, pick these vertices, and just get all these guys here and pull that out, and then maybe I think pull all that. F for frame selected, and pull this one too. You know, to me that's starting to look a little bit, I might have gone too big here actually, so maybe I went too far, but anyways, I would adjust that some. And yeah, you want to cut out this door and add these doors here, you know, cut out this window and add that window frame there, you know, and cut out these shapes as well. Yeah, and I think we've got 4 columns here. And I think your building seems to be too short this way. I mean, it's sometimes hard to tell in perspective, but whoops, didn't mean to do that. I would argue the whole thing is longer. Whoops, let's try that again. This way. And then that'll give you a room, for example, for another right mouse click, object mode. Why is the Control D will duplicate, and I can, you know, have another one there. So that's starting to look more proportional. You can add these different roof pieces in. I think that helps with the shape. So yeah, adjust the proportions and then, you know, start adding in the detail. This is Alfred, and yeah, it looks like you're maybe struggling a little bit behind. So there's not too much to critique here, just a couple cubes and another little piece that's a little off kilter here. So yeah, all I can say is kind of keep going and try to catch up on this. I think if there's anything I can help you with, let me know. Just ask for help. It's always good to, if you're going to help, be sure to post the current version of your file when you do, so I have something to work with, and let me know what you're struggling with. You mentioned the audio problem with the videos. I haven't noticed that before. We've used these videos for a while and the audio seems okay, so just double check any kind of volume controls on your computer. Maybe if you're not using headphones, try using headphones, but the audio should be okay. So yeah, like I said, there's not too much to critique here, but keep going and making more primitive objects and putting them in position and trying to match the image that you see that you're basing it on. This is Ariana, and yeah, you've got a start here, which is good. I think you need to kind of pay a closer attention to the image. You'll notice that it's a 2-story building, and that the building is just on the kind of the right side, and then you have this overhang to the left of it, but you have an overhang on both sides. You'll want to add that bench and look to the other details here in the windows and the doors. And these kind of edge pieces here are nice detail to add. Columns. So there's a lot to add, but I think the big thing is first, get those basic proportions right, because you have one big, box here, a box on top of that, this overhang pulling out to the left, the columns there, and so, you'd get rid of that, for example, entirely, move this stuff over. Like something like that. Pick these and make this bigger. That, and maybe this comes out further. And you've got two columns here, when actually, there's just the ones in the middle there. So also, I think you asked in a separate. Oh yeah, and it's quite a bit thin this way, so I would tend to, pull this out, make this whole thing wider. Well, that's not working well. I'll just select everything and try to scale it. Whoops. Make sure I'm in object mode. If you can just component mode, object mode. Yeah, that's messing it up. So if it messes it up like that, if you group it all, Control G for group, it should scale more correctly. So yeah, like I said, I think you've got a lot of proportions and that kind of stuff to fix before you start adding details. So take a closer look at all the shapes. Oh, and you had asked about this surface, this roof. So you can see, if you look closely, I'm going to isolate the selected object, which I can do by hitting this little button right here. And you can see the gray color inside the roof and not. So the surface is reversed. The normals, which are the direction perpendicular to the faces, are facing inwards rather than outwards. So if I do mesh display and I do reverse, you'll see it'll switch that around. And now this inside's dark, see that? And the outside's gray. But actually I can make it so I see both sides if I do lighting, two-sided lighting, and now they're both, unless they're in shadow, but they're both that gray color. Okay, so yeah, quite a bit of work to kind of get this to match more, and then after you've done that, you should start adding detail. Okay, this is Michael Lee, and yeah, it's a good start. I think when you take a look at the proportions, I think you're paying pretty good attention. I would say this looks it looks kind of narrower, this tower, than yours. Looks a little kind of thicker. Another thing, if you look at this railing, look at the scale of this one compared to the teeny tiny scale of that one. This is, 4 or 5 times higher than that. So bring those down quite a bit to make this nice little cute thing. And then, yeah, get in there and get those windows and doors cut out, and get the window frames and panels and all that stuff. And you can have the roof can overhang here just like that one does, as well as, you see you've got that on the top, but you don't have that here, so you can extrude that out and give yourself a little more geometry there to have that overhang. So yeah, it's a good start. You've got a few of the basic blocks, and now you can fix some of the proportions and then add detail. Okay, this is Mercedes, and yeah, this is a good start. It's got a lot of the shapes in there and decent proportions. I would look at, for some adjustments, this is looking very thick to me, whereas that edge there looks very thin. For this, you have this upward piece here, but you don't have these kind of side pieces there, so I feel like those need to be brought up. You can add the detailing in the top here, and same with telegraph. I think the columns are looking a little thin, so those could be thicker. And then of course you want to go in and cut out all your doors and windows. So, yeah, as far as getting some of the basic building block shapes in there, this is looking okay. This is Nurs, and yeah, I can see where this is kind of loosely based on that other one, but I think that you've got a long way to go to make those match. And I would start with just the basic shape where you've got the the sort of two sides and the diagonal within it. So there's sort of any number of different ways you could start out and do that. But let's say we were starting from scratch, and one approach could be under Mesh Tools. You could use Create Polygon, and then you can just place each vertex. So I'm going to just hold down X to snap to the grid, but I could just kind of imagine this. Let's see, I'm just holding down X. Is that right? Maybe not. I think that that's going to be smaller, that piece. Just right mouse click, take the vertex, maybe move this out one, this up, maybe more like that. Doesn't have to be snap to grid. Anyways, and then pick this face and extrude it up. I can hold down Shift, click right mouse click, then I get this marking menu. I can do extrude face and then pull that up. This needs to be reversed. Mesh display reverse. Anyway, you see how I'm starting to get that basic shape with the corner cut, and of course I can make my adjustments to that now, like maybe sort of looking at this, I think this would be a bit longer, and maybe this is a bit longer that way too. So I've got that, could be a way to start, and then I could either build this as a separate surface, or I was just thinking if I want to add a little extra edge there, I could use the multi-cut tool, Mesh Tools, multi-cut, and if I hold down the Control key, see it makes a whole new edge there, and I can put that in, right mouse click, face, select these faces, and shift right mouse click, extrude face, and now I've got that kind of deck around there. Maybe it's taller. Maybe even longer this way. It's just hard to tell because of the perspective. I might do that again. That for that awning. Get the multi-cut tool, and it seems like this top half is that a bit taller than the bottom half, so maybe not quite all the way up, and then is that too thick? And then right mouse click, face, 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 shift extrude face, pull these out, pull them down. Oops, okay, I'll just switch this so it's just down the origin, and it really looks too low to me, so I might right mouse click vertex, select all of those, just move that all up. Now I'm thinking I pulled it out too far because it's overlapping the if I look at these compared to these, for example, it's not too far off, but yeah, I might move this back a touch. Anyways, so just giving you some ideas of how you might approach it, because right now I think what you started with is so very different from the artwork, so I think you've got a bit of a ways to go to fix that up. This is Jeffer, and yeah, it's a pretty good start. I think that generally the building looks a little bit wider compared to the height than you have. This looks, there's more width here. You could add stuff like the staircase on the side and these windows on the side and the window here. If you look at the height of the door compared to the height of this story and this deck, it comes right up to the top there. So you might want to adjust your proportions so those match. Also, I think you'll find a little more room between the window and the ground, and get these like window frames right, the thickness and the very thin separators in the window panes as well. So yeah, I think you have some general proportion issues to try and get this to match better a little bit first, and then you can start working in all those extra details. Okay, this is Cam, and the first thing is if your camera's off kilter like this, if you go to View and then what is it? Default View, Alt Home Hotkey, and now it should act a little bit more normally. You've picked the oh, sorry, wrong one. Yeah, I might. You'll notice how much, for example, this raises above here. See the height there compared to this, and then you have this little detail with this railing and all these fine little things there, and the little kind of roof that overhangs these pieces. These are details you can have, but it's basic blocking right now. Also notice that the awning here, or the overhang here, those columns get pretty close to the edge. They're not right at the edge, but they're pretty close, where if you've got a lot of distance here, so I probably would say shorten this deck back in, but also maybe drag these out, and then you might want to get these things to meet in the middle here. Yeah, actually it'd be better if they didn't overlap at that base either, because that's going to be tricky. So the other approach to this might be something more like this, actually. Let's try this, see if this works. Well, first, yeah, I might not have it intersecting quite so much, but let's try taking these and, whoops, getting it to be about a 45-degree angle. And then let's see what would happen if I selected this face and extruded it. I'll do Shift right mouse click, extrude face, click on this thing, and then go like that. But then scale it flat this way to make it straight, and move it there, and then you get this corner here, and I can maybe adjust it a little bit more. Something like that, and then it's one continuous piece there, and get the columns in the right place. And you'll notice these columns have a bit more detail. I showed an approach to that using Revolve at the beginning of this video, so you might want to watch that. Yeah, so some proportion fixes, and then especially the height here, and then start adding some of the detail.